Hello, my fellow comic book collectors. Today's show is going to be a really, really great one. I have MVP Maxfield Von Priestley on my channel. We'll just call him Max. It's just so much shorter. But he has a really great channel. And what happened was I did a controversial video, which some of you might have watched in the past. I got into a bit of trouble with my video. And it was really a commentary to Regie's video. And I was basically just responding to Regie Collects video. And one of the people that responded to me mentioned, hey, you got to check out the other part to Reggie's video. And in that other part, he was interviewing Max. And I was like, oh, I got to check that out. I'll watch it. And because he said it really gives the other side, the other perspective. And I thought that was really important to see. So I went over and I really enjoyed Max's very thoughtful, very logical, very analytical way of thinking in the way he responded to Reggie. So I was like, oh, I gotta reach out to this guy. And I was like, but he probably has like this massive YouTube channel, so he'll never like respond to me. But he was kind enough to respond to me, and we talked on the phone, and he's a really great guy. So I'm so happy to have him come on my channel. And Max, welcome to the channel.
Yeah, well, yeah, like I said, before we even started, I just thank you for reaching out. Thank you for extending your thoughts and your opinions with the previous video and the discussions that we've been having, not just you and I, but myself and Reggie and his fans. Like there's been a great communication aspect to all of this and discussion with all of this, because that's what we're trying to promote is
Yeah.
discussion and talking about these things that are super important to talk about. So yeah, like I said, thank you for having me on the channel. It's a pleasure. And thankfully, I don't have a very big channel, so it was super easy
that
for
was a
me
bonus
to.
for me.
Yeah,
But you will.
exactly.
I think you're going to. I think you're going to. Your channel. I kind of have this thing. Like I'm a marketing guy, so that's my day job, and my success has come out of like recognizing patterns. Okay, so
yeah,
and when I see a certain style of YouTube channel, I know that kind of channel is going to be successful. So I think in a year to 2 years time, you'll have like 10,000 subs easily.
Whew.
And if
Wow.
you
Well,
keep up what
thank
you're
you.
doing, okay? Because
100%.
I see a
Yeah.
certain style that works, and my style, nah, but your style is good. You have the right voice, you have the right the right content. You're doing well. So keep up it, and you'll be bigger than me, and I'll try to leverage you in the future. So
Well, thanks, man. I greatly appreciate the kind words, and yeah, that's really been the most difficult part, because I started this channel after I got out of the Marine Corps. So it's about 7-8 months in the making of just kind of starting this new path. And one of the hardest things has been consistency. It's fun to make these videos. It's fun to create content. It's fun to think of different content ideas, but to actually sit down, make the video, edit it, publish it, and be consistent about that is really, really difficult. Which is why I appreciate your stuff, because we're getting stuff a lot on your channel, which is fantastic. A lot of unboxings, like you said, a lot of, kind of almost like a show and tell format.
mhm.
So I love the kind of stuff that you do, because I think there's always, if there's one thing that I saw in that in Reggie's videos, through all the comments that I was reading, which a lot of them were not so great, but some of them were, very very logic based and very kind of both sides, and thinking, hey, may not, though I may not agree with this, I can understand and I can respect the discussion. All these people were coming from tons of different comic book avenues. Some were speculators, some were collectors, some were readers, some were scholars, like people who study comics. Because yeah, the truth is just I'm just a fan of this stuff. I just absolutely love it. I'm enthralled by this storytelling medium, and I'll never claim to be a scholar or a educator or a professor on any of this stuff. It's just something I really love, and I think we can tend to get a bad rap because of we just love this stuff.
Yeah.
We may not study it in depth and understand the context behind this subjective meaning or objective meaning, or this political period in time that was. We just like it, like and
Sure,
though
you're
maybe
coming from the fanboy kind of, and
right.
the real the one that actually, in the way, the one that I can respect the most, the ones that are actually reading the comics and enjoying the comics instead of
Mhm.
those who are speculating on it or like just randomly collecting it. You're coming at from that true fanboy, perspective, and I can really appreciate that.
Well, thanks, man. And yeah, sometimes it's tough because as I think you and I have talked about on the phone, fanboys can get a bad rap. Fanboys
Mhm.
tend to be this depiction of the fat, overweight, really
Living in the
uh,
mother's basement.
living, yeah, living in the mom's basement. They tend to be more ignorant. They tend to be not as well informed or not as well, adjusted to society and their worldview and stuff. And I think that's so many times I've seen that be so incorrect because of people like you who reach out and who have traveled the world and seen different cultures and spoken with many different people of different backgrounds. And
Mhm.
for you, someone who's in marketing, you have to know what sells to broad audiences of
Mhm.
everyone, no matter their race or their gender or their background or their social status. Marketing kind of takes that, and says, "How can we just make a product that people are going to love and people are going to
Mhm.
appreciate?" So I really respect that, coming from your standpoint.
So to give my viewers a little bit more context, um, the video that I'm talking about was Regie Collects did two part. I think it was just two parts, right?
Yeah, from as of right now, there was the first part, which I guess was
Which
was
was you,
my,
and
mhm, and
and
then the
then this.
second one, yeah, which was
Yeah. So
titled
it's just a
"Diversity in Comics."
two-part video where he was looking at diversity in comics, which I have to give high regards to, or like a lot of respect to Reggie for actually taking on this. this is this is like taking on a bomb, like and saying,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go over and hold this bomb for a little bit and hope for the best. It's such a like a very sensitive topic, and people have really, really, really extreme views on it. It's like it is very polarized. It
Mhm,
is a topic that most people don't even want to touch with a 10-foot pole. And
mhm,
for Reggie to take it on, I thought was really brave, and I thought it was really good that he was open to the idea of dialogue and
mhm,
really kind of hearing both sides of the story, and not necessarily when he interviewed you, I felt like he didn't paint you as like some Nazi racist extremist. He said this is just a regular guy and this is
mhm,
his concerns, and I
right.
thought that that was a very fair thing. Actually, I kind of want you to share some of the questions that Reggie had for you, and we can sort of see how he actually set you up to be seen as just a regular Joe. like
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's and I'll echo your sentiment by saying that I really appreciated his humanizing of me, because so many times in our realm, people tend to dehumanize to win an argument.
Yeah.
They tend to say, "Well, you're just an ist or an ism or a phobe," and automatically that dehumanizes that person to uh, not to give no validity to an argument, which is extremely insulting. Because what we want to do is we want to have calm, logical, and thought producing like discussions. And so I think the way that Reggie went about it was, which is, like you said, extremely courageous and respectful. I really honored that about him, because yeah, the second you put the word woke or diversity or something like that in a title of your YouTube channel, you are bound to get a loss of subscribers or some trolls in the chat or the comments. Like, it's just bound to happen because people
Mhm.
feel so strongly about this stuff. So I will, first of all, I'll ask you kind of what he asked me to initially start the conversation, which was these questions of like, do you think diversity in comics is a bad thing?
Of
To
course
which,
not.
of
Personally, I
course,
don't. Personally, I don't.
right. And
I'm all for diversity. I don't believe in forced diversity,
mhm,
and I kind of like the idea of diversity of thought and
mhm,
diversity of story ideas, rather than like quotas. Um,
right.
a
Because that
good example.
seems,
Yeah, a good example. Just quickly, I always get kind of like I watch so much YouTube that
mhm,
sometimes I get sort of distracted by like that thought that's in my mind. Lord of the Rings, there's so
mhm,
many commentaries about Lord of the Rings, and I guess there's almost a socialist way of thinking in the way that they're creating stuff nowadays. And
mhm,
it's the socialist way of thinking is by committee, that you make something based on what the committee agrees on as these have to be in the movie. So when they created the Lord of the Rings movie, and I just recently heard about this, they actually had a checklist that
mm,
they had to have a certain number of black people, certain number of people with disabilities in it, certain number of people with that are women, and on any screen time, 50% of the time it has to be women on the screen at all times,
wow.
which
Wow.
which seems a little bit hard thing to do. And then the other thing was they had to have LGBTQRS plus representation as well. So if you think about it, all of those things, I that representation, sure, whatever. I'm not really uh, like against those people being represented, but sometimes the story doesn't call for that. Like it doesn't make sense
Mm.
to have that representation. Like it was there was a like sorry to kind of go on multiple rants here, but
No, you're great. You're
but
great.
there was a funny thing where they had this video game. I forgot what video game it was, but it was like a World War II setting. Okay.
Mhm,
And basically what they wanted to do is the video gamers had this checklist, this wonderful checklist. We gotta have all these diversity points. So the main protagonist was a one-armed woman. Okay.
hmm,
And okay, so she's like fighting against the Nazis with one arm, and like, and it's supposed to be World War II realistic setting. Okay. And the other thing is, because they had to have diversity on both sides, right? They had to have black Nazis. And I thought, well, gee, that why not Jewish Nazis too? And like, like it just sometimes it just doesn't make sense. It's like, and
it's so
that's
odd. Yeah.
yeah. So people were laughing about it. Like, why are there black Nazis? It's like,
Yeah.
because you
Why
could
would
choose,
you?
like you could choose to play either side, right? You could choose to be the allies
Right.
or the Nazis, and then you could choose your character type, and so you could choose like, I could be a black Nazi and go around, you know it's it,
That's,
it's pretty crazy.
yeah,
So
that's so odd.
yeah,
I will say there's there is like when we're in a historical context, it would be extremely insulting if, there was a white man who took the role of a different culture's
hero,
protagonist, or a
yeah,
different, yeah,
yeah,
a different culture's hero. So it seems insulting for then, that to happen in another context historically. um I've seen it done what, like, there's a great comic series called Extremity by Daniel Warren Johnson, where the protagonist is a female in like this post-apocalyptic world, and she actually has a missing arm as well. But in that context, it's this fantasy world that's like this
yeah,
beautifully drawn, really well created, thought out process. And so I love Extremity, but in a World War II context, it makes absolutely no sense because there's just no historically there would be like uh, you wouldn't be able to serve in the military if you don't have an arm. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like you
yeah.
could serve in different capacities, but not on the front line. So yeah, there are logical aspects of, hey, does this make sense or does this work? And one of the things that I wanted to say that you had mentioned earlier was just the simple fact of we don't think that diversity in comics is a bad thing. You know,
Hmm.
we want more diversity of thought and more diversity of culture and environments and just people telling their stories. I think that's a beautiful thing. But so many times we get labeled as people who don't want that. But
Hmm.
what I think we ultimately don't want is like if I could say appropriation, I guess, of characters,
Yeah.
for the sake of, like kind of like you were saying, forced diversity. Because the forcefulness seems disingenuous and it seems uh, very it doesn't seem real. And when you have a quota, it almost does a disservice to that person. Because a lot of my friends would say, most of my Marines that were in the military with me were either black or Hispanic. That was probably 70% of my platoon was black or Hispanic. And a lot of them would tell me, I don't need someone to tell me who I am, or I don't need someone to tell me that I can do this or that I'm allowed to be this person in a comic book or in a
Hmm.
story. I know who I am and I'm strong enough to not allow, to not have someone tell me what mantle I can take up or what story I can tell or whatnot. And I thought that is courageous. That's bravery. That's having your own voice and your own influence. But having someone tell you that you're just part of a quota just seems so insulting, you know?
Well, the thing that always bothered me is the idea, especially with quotas, is the idea that if you see somebody in whatever role or in a job that is that quota, that diversity hire, then you say, well, did they truly get the job, or did
Mm,
they just get it because diversity? You know,
such a
um,
great point. Yeah.
and so what it does is it demeans that person. It
Mhm.
instantly demeans them because there's no credibility to the fact that they got that job or they got that role or they got that character part, because you're not sure. And it's something that is going to be on the back of everyone's mind because we
Mhm.
know that there are these quotas. We know that they're kind of pushing diversity, and it really makes us wonder. Are they kind of a diversity hire? And we'll kind of always kind of critique them in that light. So we might be a little bit more critical of their performance
Mm.
when it's maybe not necessary to be so. They could have been hired just for the fact that they're a great actor, or they really portray that character well, or whatever. But we'll never truly know. Do you know what I mean?
Mm. There's I'll relate this back to one of the things that Reggie and I were talking about in the initial conversation, and that was the sense that Reggie is a fitness guru expert. He's dealt within he's been in fitness competitions, and one of the things that really stuck with me that was that in those competitions everyone was pretty much colorblind because they
Yeah.
were picking the one who had the best physique or the one who had the best structure, the most musculature. Didn't matter what skin color you were, what gender you were, the best person on the stage was winning that day, and everyone knew
Yep.
it. And I thought that was such a great depiction of the best man or woman for the job because it is, for me, for the Marine Corps, I'll bring it back to that again. When we're in boot camp, everyone is on the same playing field. And the only way to make yourself stand out from the rest is to perform better, or
Hmm.
to just outright perform at a level to where you're going to get the job, or be the first in to finish this physical event, or to be the first to get 100% on your exam or something. So it was always a competition, and it was always the best man or woman won, no matter what your background was or who you were. And I think too many times today now, as one of my friends would say, it's a casting process instead of a hiring process,
Yeah.
because you're casting,
You're
this like
casting that checkbox.
correct, yeah, instead of hiring the best person for the job. Um, Now, I guess the counterpoint to that, to play devil's advocate, would be, well, even if they're not the person for the job, they have they have a different background, so we need to hear their voice, or they're more diverse, so we need to hear their voice um, in our realm. But
I can
yeah,
push back
what would
against
your
that if you
yeah,
want.
I would say, what would your counter argument to that be?
So I hear that argument a lot, that, oh, we
Mm,
need to have inclusion and diversity for this reason, because we need
mm,
that representation, because those people, their voices have never been heard. And what, that's the typical thing that they say, their voices haven't been heard.
mm,
And so that really kind of makes us wonder, well, can I um, understand the plight of somebody else?
mhm,
And like, as a writer, as a person, like, can I understand somebody else that is different from me? And I would say yes, I can actually understand their plight. I can understand their experience, and I can reflect that in, if I was writing a story, I can reflect that. And if I was a politician, for example,
mhm,
I could represent those people. I could say, well, here, I know that these things will help you because you need help this way.
mm,
And I think that regardless of my skin color, I could do that. But when you have it that you think that only people that look like you can represent you,
mm.
that's super racist. First of all, that's a very racist way of thinking. That, then it becomes like, well, if that's the case, then you have to have, like, you would basically say, well, then we wouldn't want anyone that doesn't look like us in whatever country we live in, because we know that they're going to force some representative in government to look like them.
Mm,
And ultimately, what will end up happening is the minorities will be pushed out, because the majorities are going to be like, well, we don't want to have them represented, because if they get their representatives, they're not going to represent what we want. And
hmm,
what'll end up happening
interesting.
is you'll actually have a situation where, if it's purely like the only people that can represent you look like you, well, there is nobody that is exactly like you. There's no clone of you that they're going to put into a story or into a role of politics. It doesn't exist. Okay, there is no you. There is just you. Like, there's just one of you. You're unique,
Which which is a beautiful thing. I mean,
which is a
to
beautiful thing.
see, yeah, to see everyone as a unique person that has their own personality, their own background, their own stories and experience of life. That, like, for me, I think that is a beautiful thing, to say that each individual person is totally different than everyone else. And it's kind of what you were saying. It's different from groupthink, or
Mm-hmm,
community think, or committee think. It
mm-hmm.
is much more of a, I have a voice, and I'm an individual, and I have different experiences and backgrounds. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Keep going.
Yeah. So sorry. Yeah. I just, it's good that you pull me back from my little rants. It's good. I appreciate it. Um, so basically, the idea is this: that either we can represent everyone, and we should be like, I don't say like that. Every politician or every character has to even represent everyone. Um, but the stories can have universal appeal,
Hmm.
and there's a
Yeah, for
difference in
sure.
that. So, for example, I watch a lot of anime. I love anime, and I do not see myself reflected in any of the characters that are there. I'm not. I don't look like big-eyed and some, sort of typical anime character. Um, but the story, I can relate to the characters. I can say,
Mm,
well, that story, I can see that arc that they go through. I can really appreciate that, and I feel like there's something in me where I want to emulate that. That I
mhm.
want to, you know, that is just something that inspires me. And it doesn't mean that like I don't have to be inspired by somebody that looks exactly like me. I'd actually be very turned off if they made like a whole movie where every character looks like me. I think that'd be like creepy and weird. And you know, um, so I don't mind having characters that don't look like me, but represent ideas that I can relate to. Does that make sense? Or
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to go back to the Lord of the Rings, kind of, what you were, because you had mentioned Lord of the Rings earlier. To mention that again, the trilogy of the Lord of the Rings, not just the books but the movies, appealed to so many different backgrounds and people, and it's a like, I guess you could call it a modern mythology. I think
Mhm.
it's more of a historical mythology and fantasy, but so many modern fantasies have been based off of that story because it reached such a broad audience and everyone could see themselves in those characters.
Mhm.
You look at Aragorn, who in the books wants to find himself, or knows that he is the rightful heir to the throne, and a king, and wants to kind of take up that mantle. And it's kind of this coming of age story for Aragorn as a ranger to king. And then you have people like Frodo, who kind of feels like he's not part of society. He's not part of this grand design. He's the weak kind of halfling, the hobbit, and yet he's
Mhm.
meant for such bigger things. And that speaks to a lot of people's hearts, that they may not feel like they fit in, but they feel like they're meant for something bigger. All those storylines and all those characters have beautiful things about them that everyone can relate to, no matter what their background or skin color is. And like we were saying earlier, I think that is such a beautiful thing in storytelling, that comics has always tended to do, is tell these beautiful, really well done stories that is across the board timeless,
Yep.
as opposed to timely.
Yeah.
Timely stories are rooted and grounded in what's going on today in modern society, but timely stories will last forever because they're universally um, told. It's a story of good and evil, or it's a story of love and romance. Like, these are things that
Yeah.
universally will
That have
always
common
do
appeal.
well.
Yeah.
Of course, yeah. So,
Just to
yeah.
bring it into the marketing realm, we can look at Lord of the Rings, the trilogy, and see it was really successful.
Mhm.
I mean, it made billions of dollars.
Easily,
And the
yeah.
reason it made so much money was not that it only appealed to a very small segment of the population, white, population. It appealed to pretty much everyone in the world. It had
Mhm.
that much universal appeal. And sometimes you got to say, well, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And nowadays I find that they have this attitude that, oh, if we do this, if we insert XYZ into this story, then we can fix it. And
Or make it
sometimes
better.
make it
Like,
better,
the
make it
right, they'll think that something's
updated.
wrong with it. Right,
Yeah.
right. And like something's missing or something needs to be fixed, or that they can
Yeah.
tell the story that someone else never told, and it's like, okay, there's adaptation and then there's perversion, and an
Hmm.
adaptation is something healthy for a story, but like, perversion of a story is when you take that fixing, when you take that I can do it better. That's a very narcissistic way of thinking when you're dealing with adaptation.
Hmm.
So, um, speaking of storylines, and speaking of that, let me bring up another question that Reggie asked me that I would love to ask you as well, because I think a lot of your fans and a lot of my fans had this question, and it really resonated with a lot of people. But with the ideology of wokeism, if we want to call it that. What I guess are the main issues that you see with the forced inclusion and diversity, or the woke ideology? Where do you see that as kind of an issue within comics or media entertainment in general? And how do you think that it can better be portrayed in a more like a more genuine and authentic and heartening way that people will really respond well to it?
Okay, that was like 20 questions in one.
Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah,
but
I know
but but
it's a
actually,
tough
I'll
question for sure,
actually
but yeah.
I'll plead the Reggie on this. So what Reggie did was kind of smart in the way he kind of looked at that question.
Mhm.
What Reggie did was, on when he did your interview, he basically defined the term woke,
Yes, yeah.
and I don't necessarily agree with with his definition, because I don't think that is like, I think I forgot what his like, I'm going to paraphrase it and I probably brutalize it, but
Mhm.
it's something like like underrepresented groups getting representation or something like that is wokeism, or yeah, something like that. You can fix me on that. Like,
I'm
what was his definition?
I think it was, I have here, to be alert to injustices within societies, especially racism. That
Okay,
was what
see,
that
I
I
was
have
totally
written
off.
down
I
here.
paraphrased terribly. Okay, so that definition maybe is what is intended, but I'm not even sure if that's a really valid thing. So it's sort of like the idea that if you want to look for injustice or racism, and you have your sort of like racism glasses on,
Mm,
you will see it everywhere. Okay,
mm.
and but if you remove those glasses, it's sort of like beer goggles. Everybody looks sexy with beer goggles. Um, you love everybody when you're wearing your beer goggles, but when you take them off, you realize, hey, these people are not necessarily the way it looked like under the beer goggles. Um, and I think that's what's happening with the racism goggles that people are wearing, that they're
Mm,
seeing things that aren't truly there. The injustices that people talk about, like, I would, like, I'm going to take sort of a right wing talking point, but if you can point out an injustice in our society, I will be fighting with you against that injustice.
mhm,
And I think that's a really good way of thinking, because they're probably, when you actually look at the details, is it really racism? Is it really any of these things? Probably not. There's actually simpler explanations. And I think that is the problem with wokeism, that they have this
mm,
assumption. They're wearing their wokeism glasses and they're seeing injustices. They're seeing this racism that might not be real, that
mhm,
might not really exist. And they're inserting that vision into comics or into storytelling. And people are like, they're like, as a reader, I'm not wearing those glasses, so
right.
I can't, it's a blurry vision for me. It's like I
Mhm.
can't understand it because it doesn't make any sense. It's not reality. It's based on this kind of weird vision of reality. Just, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
so I think what I hear you saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is basically there are injustices in society. There are moments of racism and uh, homophobia, and there are absolute injustices within our society. However, if we start to see everything as that,
Mm-hmm.
if we just start pointing out that's racist, that's racist, that's racist, and then everything is just a racist injustice, then it's kind of a boy who cried wolf scenario, because
Yeah.
then how can one thing, how can you pull something apart that's like, hey, this really is an issue and an injustice, but you're calling this thing, which is not, um
Well.
an injustice, and so they're kind of like almost muddying the waters to where just
Mhm.
everything is an injustice, and it's like, let's look at this a different way. And
Yeah.
is
I
that
mean,
kind of what I'm hearing you say?
And just to add to that, that's you've toned down what I said, so it's good. But one thing that I always like the concept of is the concept of mountains and valleys.
Hmm.
Okay, and if you call everything racism, then it means nothing,
Right.
because there is no mountain and there is no valley.
Hmm.
So there's no comparative. Like, so for example, like, and so it demeans the things that actually are racist. You can say, well, that was pretty racist.
Yeah.
But if you call something that's trivial racist, then that word racism really doesn't have any meaning anymore. It doesn't have that punch.
Of course.
And I think that that's generally what's happening, that we it's almost like a knee-jerk reaction nowadays, like, oh, somebody doesn't agree with me, oh, they're racist.
Right.
That kind of knee-jerk way of looking at things. And it really trivializes the actual significance of racism. Like, I'm against, like, the that sort of vile version of racism, but
Hmm.
half the stuff that they call racist, I'd be like, really? It's like, you know.
Right. Yeah. It seems, trivial at the time. Like there's an example. There was a debate that just recently happened between two different channels, basically discussing like a tweet that I don't know if you know who Eric July is. Eric July
No.
is a YouTuber, and he's trying to create his own comic book industry right now because he's a black man who feels that um, that this whole diversity thing is just like you said kind of earlier is one big quota. He feels that he doesn't believe that these white editors and storytellers should be trying to tell him um,
What it means
like
to be
what
black.
mantle swaps. Right? Yeah, exactly. Like because he's like, you don't know who I am. You
Mhm.
don't know my how what my life looks like to be this skin color. So he's making his own comic books and his own comic industry. Really intelligent dude. He just had an interview and a discussion, well, an argument with another channel that was saying that he was defending white creators and
Supremacists
white
and stuff.
supremacy. Yeah, yeah. And so they're both going back and forth. And one of the topics that had been brought up was that the gentleman uh, going against Eric July was saying that crackhead is inherently racist, that term crackhead was inherently racist, and that Eric July had used it in a term to call out other black people. And that's just not the case. Crackhead, is an insult, yes, but you can call anyone a crackhead, and
Yeah,
that there's no way, at least in my mind, that I can
I
see
always
it
think of actually white
directed.
people. Sorry.
Right, that's kind of what I was thinking too. I was like, "Man, that guy's a crackhead." I think of like a white guy on the side of the street,
Yeah,
and as terrible as that sounds too, that's just the thing. And
it's what
so,
we experience, right?
right, it's what we see. It's the as Stan Lee would say, it's the world outside our window. It's
Hmm.
what we have experienced and whatnot. So this guy had brought his bias and thought that it was one thing, and Eric had brought his bias and thought it was another thing. So when this guy is calling Eric a racist for calling someone a crackhead, it like you said, it demeans that argument because Eric wasn't trying to be racist at all. He was trying to call out the inconsistencies. He was trying to call out the injustices and these people who think that they are so much better, that they have something wrong, so they're crackheads, and that's what he was saying. He
Yeah,
wasn't
yeah.
trying to say, "Oh, all these type of people." And so, all that being said, like you said, it devalues the phrase, it devalues the significance of that word because it is heavy, and I think it should be used sparingly when it's necessary in that certain injustice, and it waters it down when it's used for everything.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
So, is there so like I guess the second part of that question that we had discussed with Reggie that he had asked me as well was where do you see this kind of what changes I think would you make to the comic book industry, or where have you seen this done well, or what could we see that would be like a positive outlook for where this could be done in a genuine fashion.
So what I think the problem is what we've had recently, and this is a very recently, I'm saying within the last 10 years, is we've had a hiring push, hiring within companies themselves to hire diversity people. And diversity people with a diversity mindset. So a good example of that would be Kathleen Kennedy in Star Wars, and her role in Star Wars. I mean, if you look at Kathleen Kennedy's career, she was basically a secretary to George Lucas. She didn't have like the chops to really be like that head of the company kind of role, but she worked with George Lucas, sure. And really she was brought in as a diversity hire. And I mean that in the most insulting way, because I don't like Kathleen Kennedy. And when she was brought in, she really brought in her vision of his work, of George Lucas's work. She almost seems to hate George Lucas's work. And she came in with the whole attitude that, it has to be more female, the Force is female. And she really had this very feminist way of looking at things. She's an activist. She's not a creator. She's not a visionary. She's an activist. And what I've seen is that they've been hiring activists at a lot of these companies, DC, Marvel, and they're not storytellers. They're not people who want to entertain. They're people that have a political and activist motivation. And what we're seeing is that instead of creating, engaging stories, they're creating stories that push an agenda, that activist kind of thing. And that's the real problem. So the only way that we can kind of solve this problem is to kind of say, well, let's fire a whole bunch of people. Let's get those people out. And it's not that those people don't have the right to have their opinion. I'm not trying to do cancel culture. I'm just saying that we got to take that ideology out of it, that we make it not about activism, but make it about storytelling again.
Now, yeah, of course, and I agree. I think the big thing is that activism has taken over creative minds, and that's the difference. Now, to play devil's advocate again, just because I think it's good for discussion, because you're either going to hear it from me or you're going to hear it for the comment section. I always tend to see it in my comments on my channel. But yeah, one of the things in the video of the diversity in comics was that the term, and I absolutely hate this term, comics have always been political, and it's a difference between a activist sharing their viewpoints in a comic book and a creator subconsciously inserting some sort of subtext of a political issue in the storyline, and I think those are two completely different things. So what would you say to someone who says like, oh, well, comics have always been political or something like that? Because I think in a way, yes, if you see it that way, like you were saying, if you have the political goggles on, then yes, art will always be political because you can see it subjectively like that. But realistically, there's a difference between creators inserting some sort of subconscious political statement, or just activists telling you something.
Get that sledgehammer. Boop.
Yes, and just that Harley Quinn. Yep, right over the head. So yeah, what is your take on that to people who might say that?
Believe it or not, I'm actually going to defer to you on that, because you actually were asked something similar on Reggie's show, and you brought up a Stan Lee quote for it.
Yeah,
and I actually really like that Stan Lee quote, and it's generally the way I think, that politics is not the foreground; it is the background. And
I
really,
have the
that's
quote if you'd like me to.
yeah. Read the quote. It's a great quote. It's a great quote.
Okay. So yeah, this comes from an AMC interview with Stan Lee, and he was discussing the creation of the X-Men because a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, the X-Men was directly a a talking point of the civil rights movement,
Yep.
and Stan never intended for that to be." I can see how people saw it that way, but in this interview with AMC, Stan says social issues I try to get in the background or underlying a plot, but never to the point of letting it interfere with the story or hitting the reader over the head. And I know that a lot of people will say that, oh, Stan has said that Marvel Comics was very political, but how can he say that that would directly, you know, disassociate itself with this comment that he's said in an interview? I have the video. It's not like it's some random like niche thing that like, oh, I found it in the annals of history. Like, no, it's out there. It's on YouTube. You can go find it. So
Mhm.
I don't understand where people are saying, Stan said that Marvel was political, and then for him to say that this subtext was never something he wanted interfering with the story, it just seems odd. So that was
Yeah.
what I had mentioned on
Well,
Reggie's video.
I actually think my summary was pretty good. Political, the way of politics in it is in the background rather than the foreground.
Mhm,
That it's sort of like the setting can be a political setting, but that's
mhm,
not the story driver. That's not the that's it's sort of like the difference between Gotham and Batman. The story is not Gotham. The story is Batman.
yeah,
So Gotham is that political environment. It can be dark. It can have all these elements that we don't like.
mhm,
And like and if you were an activist, you'd say, oh, it has the racism, it has the sexism, it has the white supremacists, and all that kind of stuff. But that's not the story. That's just the setting, and the
mhm,
story is really this guy fighting against all those things. He's got his own story. He's got his own motivations. He's got and he's just in that environment. If
yeah.
that makes yeah. So I think that
I think so for sure.
um so yeah, which kind of brings me like I'm just looking at the time, and
Mhm,
I kind of want to continue this conversation because I think it's a really great conversation.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but I want to continue it on your channel so that people go over to your channel. And I sort of brought up Batman, and I recently watched Batman the movie, and you watched it as well. And
That I
I
did.
think we should have a discussion about that wokeism and Batman and that in what we thought of the movie. So I'd like to do my movie review on your channel. So
Excellent. Well, I would be honored. So yeah, let's do it, brother. That
uh,
sounds super fun.
okay, so thanks for coming on the show. And for those people who are watching, now you got to go over to Max's channel. Okay, it's going to be linked somewhere there, and in the description as well. And we're gonna continue the conversation on Max's channel. So watch part 2 on Max's channel. Thanks again for watching, everyone. Thanks, Max, for coming on the channel again. And it was great talking to you.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Thank you again for having me on. Thank you for reaching out. And for those of you who are listening, thank you for engaging in this conversation with us. It means a lot. These are topics that I think we need to discuss openly and not in fear of being called a certain name or being, canceled or anything. I think these are discussions that need to be open and we can all be empathetic towards and ones that are really interesting and that are going to help this comic book industry, not hinder it. So like I said, thank you again for having me on, man, because it means a lot that we could talk about this stuff. And yeah, I'll see you over on my channel.